right. Well, a few people are still signing on. I'm going to go ahead and kick us off with my introductions. Again, thank you everyone for joining today. My name is Veronica Buckwalter. I'm with Jobs for the Future and with the National Student Attendance Engagement and Success Center. So I want to welcome you to today's webinar, Finishing Strong. Before we begin, I want to make sure that everyone is aware of an upcoming national convening being hosted by the National Technical Assistance Center. It's going to be held May 9th and 10th in Baltimore. And what we can do in just a minute here, or Dantel, perhaps you can put this in the chat box, is provide you the link to register for the event if you think you're interested in attending. Registration closes April 30th. And you can also reserve hotel rooms through April 30th, but it's going to be a really great event in Baltimore with a ton of super experienced and knowledgeable speakers. We have a jam-packed 2-day agenda planned. So definitely feel free to visit the website that we put up to learn more about that event and to see the full agenda. So why don't we dive into today's webinar, and I'm just going to share some brief details. Today's webinar will last for approximately 60 minutes with time for questions throughout. Everyone has been automatically placed on mute upon entry into the webinar, and only our panelists will be unmuted throughout the presentation. Therefore, if you have a question, please feel free to utilize the Q&A panel at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. And also feel free to submit your questions at any point throughout the presentation, and we'll pause as needed for our presenter to respond. If for some reason we don't have enough time to get through all of your questions, we'll take note of those questions that come in, and we'll try to have our speaker respond to you as quickly as possible via email. We do encourage you to ask questions or simply make comments. So this webinar is being recorded. The recording and the slides will be made available to all registrants, and they will be posted on the National TA Center's temporary website. And we will post a link to this website as well within the chat function so that you can jot that down in case you're interested in accessing the webinar recording. Dan, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you. So today's webinar is one of a number being offered by the National Student Attendance Engagement and Success Center during 2018. This is a National Technical Assistance Center that was launched in 2016, and it's funded by the Department of Education's Office of Safe and Healthy Students. The mission of the center is to disseminate evidence-based practices and build and facilitate communities of practice to help students attend school every day, be engaged in school, and succeed academically so that they graduate high school prepared for civic, career, and college life. Next slide, please, Dantel. So as part of the center, we have 2 communities of practice, and these are the 2 that you see here on this slide. They're focused on the 30 National My Brother's Keeper Success Mentor sites and the many SIG and SIG eligible schools throughout the country that are working to implement early warning system programs to address chronic absenteeism. Unfortunately, although we've run into several unanticipated delays in launching the formal Technical Assistance Center website, we are pleased to announce that we actually do hope to be able to launch that site early this summer. Probably not in time for the national convening next month, unfortunately, but it should be very soon after that. So please be on the lookout for an announcement about the launch of that website, where you'll be able to access a ton of information around early warning systems and success mentors and other resources. So today's webinar is being presented by Donette Hall. Donette is a facilitator from Talent Development Secondary at Johns Hopkins University. She works in Tulsa, Oklahoma with 3 elementary, 2 middle, and 2 high schools around using early warning systems and social emotional learning to improve student outcomes. She's part of the national team offering support across the nation in EWS, acceleration, and transition curriculum and academies. She pioneered the early warning system in the elementary schools in Tulsa. So with that, Donette, I'm going to pass things over to you and just remind everyone that if you have questions throughout the presentation, please feel free to enter them in the chat, and I will be monitoring those. And if any questions come in, Donette, I'll be sure to let you know so that we can pause and get those answered. With that, I'll turn it over to you.
Hi everyone, it's great to be here today. Today we're going to talk about finishing strong because we always want the school year to end strong. So some of the things we will be doing is defining finishing strong, learning what areas the school needs to focus on to finish strong, give concrete examples, and then you can begin looking ahead and planning for the end of the school year. So when you think about finishing strong in your school, what do you think about? So just kind of ponder that for a minute. What does finishing strong mean to you? In sports, finishing strong means pushing to win until the end of the game. And it's the same in schools. We want to push students to finish strong in attendance, behavior, and course performance. To finish strong, the players must be present during practice as well as during the game. In school, students must attend classes through the end of the year. Students can't learn if they're not there. Just like these soccer players had to attend practice to learn to dribble the ball and defend the goal, students need to come to school every day to gain knowledge and skills. Players must have correct behavior in order to play in the game. Students need to exhibit acceptable behavior at school. The first time this player jumped, I'm sure it wasn't as high as you can see in this picture. He had to practice that behavior to get it where he wanted it to be. And students can practice positive behavior every day at school. And these players must perform not only during the big game, but during practice as well. Students need to complete their work every day and finish strong. These players, you can tell, practice their skills to be able to perform this block in a game. Students practice their skills in school to be successful in the classroom, on the test, and in life. Just like sports teams, schools need to make sure students are in attendance, that they behave appropriately, and that they perform in their courses through the end of the school year. So we're going to begin by looking at a little data. Okay. When you look at this graph, you can see the different months throughout the year, and it shows their ADA. The average daily attendance rate in schools vary from month to month with a decline at the end of the year. And schools can't expect their students to be successful if they aren't in attendance. Okay, so we want to stop that big drop-off at the end. This chart shows how we have seen students who are on track or close to on track all year disengage in the last few weeks of school and end up failing the course. You can see like student A and student C, they were strong first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and then they became disengaged fourth quarter and ended up failing. Student B, you know, they did fine up until third quarter where they started sliding, and then they fell completely off track fourth quarter. And student D started out sliding, we got him back on track, but then fourth quarter, something happened and he just became totally disengaged. One of our goals of finishing strong is to prevent this disengagement. One idea to kickstart finishing strong and help students at the end of the third quarter is to hold community student conferences or report card conferences. This is an event that invites successful adults from the community into your school to meet individually with students to discuss current grades, attendance, and behavior. And a lot of them take it a step further and really engage the student, you know, what do you want to do in the future? What are your interests? What else can we do to help support you? A STEP protocol puts the student and the community member at ease and promotes a positive conversation. You can use paper copies to take notes. Schools I've been in, we've kind of gone to the electronic copy so that we have a quick and easy access to kind of see where the students are at, engage them, and help them. Each conference takes about 5 to 7 minutes, and I want to share with you how powerful these conferences can be. At a high school that I support, a volunteer was talking with a student about his strengths, and the student told her that he really liked to dance and that he'd posted a few videos online. And he went on to say that a school in New York had sent him a letter inviting him to come to their school. When the volunteer asked for more information, he said it was a school he'd never heard of. It was something like Juilliard. Needless to say, the volunteer was very excited and explained what Juilliard was and encouraged the young man to reply to the letter. Volunteers leave the conference excited to have been part of the students' lives, even for that brief time period. Many of them ask to return and hopefully meet with the same students, but they just love that connection. As you can see, these conferences help encourage a positive culture focused on finishing strong. When we think of finishing strong, there are 5 main areas to consider: teaching and learning, capturing student voice, student celebrations and exhibitions, increasing bandwidth for interventions, and adult motivation. We're going to look at each one of these in more depth. Think about all the things that must be accomplished at the end of the year. What academic milestones must be met for student academic success? Do the students have to take a standardized test, a state test? If so, how do you promote a positive atmosphere during this time? One school I supported held a testing pep rally for each grade level. During the rally, they shared a video with encouraging messages from their teachers and other people in the school. It also included a popular celebrity and upbeat music. The message was they were on fire and would do well on their tests. Attendance was high the next day during the testing, and students went into the test really, truly believing that they could do it. Does school share current grades with parents? And if so, how do you do that? Okay, so they get the progress report, so we know we do it every 6 weeks, but is there a way for them to get it any earlier? And a lot of different schools have different ways to do that. Are there one-on-one conferences between students and teachers? One way that I've seen and helped is during an advisory period. Teachers call the students up one at a time and review their current grades. During this brief time together, they create a plan to raise any low grades and brainstorm ways to overcome any barriers. By doing this once a week, teachers and students build strong collaborative relationships. These conferences really help students remain focused because they are held accountable for their own actions. So what are you already doing? Think about your school and what you're already doing to finish strong. An example is a culminating activity for energy. Students could design a slow cooker so you can compare solar energy to thermal energy. One day of the experiment could be actually cooking the food and eating it. And I'm thinking like hot dogs and s'mores. And I've actually done this when I was teaching, and they loved it. And it was amazing the things that they could build. Other projects I've seen are building boats out of cardboard. So one school had students research countries, and they researched boats and the size of the boat and the shape of the boat and what would be the best way to float on water. So they learned about buoyancy, and they created mini boats that they raced across just like a sink. And then they had to take it one step further, and they got pieces of cardboard and they had to build a boat, and it had to be able to hold 2 people who were paddling. They had to decorate it. They had to have a country name on the side, so each one represented a country, and they were able to put facts about the country and everything. And then they took them to a swimming pool, and the students had to race down the swimming pool with everybody else cheering them on. So it was fantastic to watch them do that, and it was so much fun, and the kids were so engaged in the whole process. Other activities might include a Colonial Day reenactment, holding Math Olympics or, Little Olympics for any other subject area. And these are just a few examples. Are there any units that can be taught in all classes for English, for math, for science, for social studies, and electives? The boat project I talked about incorporated research for English, weight distribution and angles for math, buoyancy for science, and countries for social studies. It also included physical movement for building and paddling the boat, and art when decorating the boat. And of course, there's other things that were pulled in all along. Be creative in these units and think outside the box, but don't be afraid to have a little fun too. Another idea for finishing strong in teaching and learning, use technology. As a teacher, I would create Jeopardy and Family Feud type games using paper and note cards and poster board and things like that. So teachers now are very fortunate to be able to have this type of technology where they can help students review for a test by making it kind of a game format. This is a game where the students were reviewing bones and the body. So if you look in the picture, you can see the bones, and you can see that all the students are actively engaged. So students love hearing and seeing experts in various areas. Are there places students could tour or speakers who could come in to enhance lessons at the end of the year for your school? Are there places a student could shadow for a day or half a day to learn more about turning their interests and their passions into a career? One school had a group of students interested in engineering, so they decided to go tour a manufacturing business. And the manufacturing business, they were so engaging for the kids, they actually let them use a 3D printer, and it was just a fantastic experience. Another student who wanted to go into cosmetology was able to shadow at a hair or a nail salon. Internships, shadowships, college visits, and field trips are great opportunities for students to explore the world beyond the school. Hands-on activities, live demonstrations, and active involvement activities help students get excited to come to school and learn in the classroom throughout the end of the year. Here, students are examining healthy and unhealthy lungs. As you can see, they are engaged and excited with this learning activity. I'm always fascinated with those lungs. I always have to stop and look at the picture on that one. Here's some more examples. The picture on the left is a self-reflection assignment. So it's actually in a middle school. So this would be a 6th grader. And they had to think, you know, how is the transition? How is everything going for the year? So this is at the end of the year when they've been able to think through. The students were tasked with identifying their own strengths and to create a way to show how they have grown throughout the year. This student felt he had a great growth as shown by the rocket that he built. And the papers on it, those are his strengths. And of course, he's got to finish decorating it. So again, that one's a work in progress, but he was so proud of it. The boxes on the right are a fun way to review for the test. The students get to roll the box and answer the question that is facing up. So it's just a way to review. I've also seen this done with a beach ball. Questions are written on the beach ball, each little section, and they get to toss it to each other, and wherever their right-hand thumb lands, or you could say any finger, it's up to you, but wherever their thumb landed, they had to answer that question and then pass the ball on to the next person. So those are just some fun teaching and learning activities that students can do. Okay. In thinking about our Tier 1 activities that are being held, we need to think how we can take them to the next level. And by this, I mean, like, some schools hold a dance for students with C's or higher, and these are usually held during the last hour or two of the day, and they just do a playlist on their iPad or on their iPod or, you know, whatever listening device you have. Another group wanted to do scholar time. So this is a structured free time for students with C's or higher, and these activities included playing basketball in the gym, playing approved games on the computers in the library, hanging out with friends in the student lounge, and other activities that might work at your school. So now it's your turn. I want to know what you do. So if you go over to the chat box and where it says send to, if you will change that to all attendees, and share some ideas that you have for finishing strong. What do you do for teaching and learning? What are some activities that you've done or plan to do this year that will keep the kids engaged and learning? So if you could just type those in, we'll see what we have. I'll give you a few minutes to think about that. And as you keep thinking and adding, I'm going to continue on and start talking about student voice, but please type in what you do for teaching and learning to help keep your kids engaged throughout the rest of the year. What does it mean to capture student voice? To me, it means getting input from the students about attendance, behavior, and course performance, as well as about what motivates them to be in school, to act right, and to do well in their classes. This gives the students the opportunity to give voice to what happens within their school and classroom, and it encourages the students to take ownership of their own educational journey. When students get a choice in what they do, they are more vested in the outcome. It gives students a sense of connectedness and improves behavior. This increases student achievement. Student voice helps increase the internal motivation because students feel heard and are part of the process and the solution. So how do we know what motivates the students? It's a very simple answer, and it's we just ask them. So some ways to obtain student voice are student surveys or focus groups. Student surveys ask for what students see as necessary initiatives, motivators, learning methods, and whatever else you'd like to know. You can do a formal survey through SurveyMonkey, or you can do kind of informal surveys in a quick way. And in order to do some of the informal ones, think about where are all students congregated or where do they pass through, and then have them vote on maybe a possible initiative or whatever you want them to vote on during that time. These places might include the lunchroom, the entry hall, student lounges, and other popular student places. You can have a poster posted and students can just put a dot on where they want the answer to be. They can do a show of hands. They can move to one side and then, for the answer to the questions. And that's just a quick, easy way to gauge what they are doing. Let's see. So here's an answer to what some of the people are doing for engaging students at the end of the year. So they say rocket launching with the tech ed class, swimming pool field trips, and rafting trips. Those sound fantastic. Thank you for sharing those. So with student voice, we want to tap into existing student groups and have members be a part of the school planning committee. Okay, do you have student council? Do you have an honor society, a junior honor society? What groups already exist and how can we tap into them and find out what initiatives, what things that they would like in their classroom? A way to make sure all students are involved, or I've seen classrooms do circles with all their students, and they have a very specific question that they ask. And then the students all share, so they get a chance as they go around the circle to share. And that's a great way to get everyone's student voice. And then don't forget about informal conversations. Teachers are always talking to students, and that's a great way to hear their voice as well. Here's some sample student survey questions. What types of things distract you from doing well in school, especially at the end of the year as the weather gets nicer? Do they want to just sit and stare out the window? All kinds of things like that. What types of incentives would they like? What end of year activities might they like? And again, these are the more formal type ones where the kids go to the computer and they're able to determine what they want to do. And then we have some sample results. Should be going. There we go. So here's one question. At one school they asked, what's the best thing about this school? And they were able to tell them. So here they really love the schools. I love seeing that. Sorry, it's not. Okay. What do you think makes this school the best? Okay, and again, that's the teachers. There's another one. I'm sorry, there we go. Now it's advancing. What do you think needs work? And I love that they would like new books. So, textbooks, trade books, whatever you're using, they would like newer books. They want more dances. They want more homework help. So it's really telling in what they say. And then what sort of prizes or incentives would get you the most interested? in the ending of school, and again, they want dance parties. And I always have to laugh. They want breakfast and pizza parties, so food is always a great motivator for them as well. And then end of year activities, they would have loved to have a teacher versus student basketball game, and I believe the school that did this survey, they actually did have one. So it's a great way to gauge what the kids would really like. Okay, another thing to think about is what role do your clubs play in your school? Are they mainly social or do they have an action focus? In some schools, clubs are utilized to give tours to guests, new students, and prospective students. Some schools use them to survey other students, and some schools use them to enact change. In one school, the students decided they wanted a cleaner school, so they organized and made posters about keeping the school clean. Students began cleaning up after themselves in the cafeteria and in the hallways. It was amazing to see the change thought of and implemented by the students. So think about, how do you utilize student voice in your school? And of course, it will depend on your school. In another school, we had a group of student ambassadors who wanted to help improve the culture and climate of the school. We had a 7th and 8th grade center, and they decided to add 6th grade. So all the work we've done on culture and climate kind of shifted because we added a grade level. So the students came up with this. They determined a team building activity for the students would help. And they planned and they implemented an outdoor activity during lunch where students held hands and passed the hula hoop around the circle. And they were very adamant about having it. One day got rained out, one day it was too cold and icy, so they kept having to push it back, but when they finally got to have it, it was a really great event, and this increased their teamwork and really utilized student voice. So now we're going to shift into student celebrations. Okay, how can we celebrate them and how can we let them showcase their talents?
Hey, Donna, this is Veronica. Before you started, we did have one question that came in.
Absolutely.
Sure. One attendee asked if there are the sample student surveys. Can attendees get copies of those?
Sure. I'll put up my email at the end, and you can just contact me and I can send them to you, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, here are some examples of student celebrations and exhibitions from across the nation. An attendance pep rally is one of my absolute favorites, where you have, usually in a pep rally, you have a spirit stick, what class can show the greatest spirit. Well, here we had an attendance stick. And the group that had the highest attendance won the attendance stick. And I'll show you a picture later where the teacher is just so thrilled that their students won that. And the kids were all there cheering and celebrating. It was great. And then also the best week ever, I want to kind of explain that. This is where we have lunch activities like Foursquare, karaoke, table games, things like that for the students to do at lunch. And then there was also a student versus faculty basketball game, which they loved. The teachers dressed up as cheerleaders, came out and did a cheer at halftime, and it was just a lot of fun and engaging for the kids. We've given out freezer pops for students when we've done field trips for year-long attendance to places like, here it's called Main Event. It's like a Chuck E. Cheese for older kids. That's the best way I can describe it. But it's got games, bowling alley, go-kart racing, all those kind of things. Some others include, you know, like talent shows, and a great way to measure how well your culture and climate is doing. I'll just tell you a brief story about one of our talent shows. The kids at practice, they were ready. We had one little girl go out on the stage and she stood there, she was ready to sing, and she saw all these people staring at her and she became very frightened and ran off the stage. Her friends quickly ran to her and talked to her, and they convinced her to come back out. So after the act that had stepped up, finished, she went back out there and she looked out and she took both of her hands and covered her eyes and she sang. And the students could have really been rude to her or mean to her, you know, because she had ran off the stage. but instead they cheered her and they celebrated the fact that she had come back out and conquered that fear. So that was just a great measure of the culture and climate of that school at that time. Other things, family breakfast. They love to bring their families in and show off what they do. So we love providing that opportunity for them as well. We recognize them for doing well on their attendance, behavior, and course performance, but we also recognize them for their improvement on the ABCs. If the student had been failing classes and just totally disengaged and then they started working, we want to recognize that because that is great for that student and that is considered a success. So here are just a couple pictures. They worked so hard to get all these kids there and talk to them and had conversations and really encouraged them and built that relationship with them. It was a lot of fun to see his group win that day. And then the picture on the left, it was students who I believe had improved their behavior. And so they got a walking field trip to Starbucks, and that's them celebrating their Starbucks. Here's some more things that we've done. We try to encourage, the staff gets involved in everything. So these are students with grades who had grades higher than a C, and their names were all put into a drawing, and they got to pie the administrators in the face. So on the left, that's our assistant principal, another assistant principal, and then the principal. So you can just see, I had to cover up her face. I didn't have permission to show the picture, but you can just see that big smile on her face. She was loving shoving that in. And that's actually a security guard that she's doing that too. So that was a lot of fun. So how do you capture student voice at your school? And how do you celebrate the students? In the chat box, type in some great ideas that you have that you use at your school. And while you add those, please add those though, because I really do want to know how you capture student voice and how you celebrate the students. But I'm going to continue talking about increasing bandwidth for students, or for interventions. As the school year draws closer to the end, how can we maximize the reach of our current interventions? As you hold EWI meetings, early warning indicator meetings, begin to look at trends and provide similar interventions for groups of students who are working to finish strong. Look at trends in attendance and discipline data. Are there days in the week where students consistently are absent? Are there days where behavior just seems really bad? What can your school put in place to counteract the negative trends and encourage positive trends? So at one school, they noticed that attendance was lower on Mondays, so they began having Donut Mondays. If a student was there for 4 Mondays in a row, they received a donut. It was funny, one little donut made such a big difference, and it was so effective that they started adding Fridays into the initiative too. So we not only increased the attendance on Mondays, we increased it on Fridays as well. Are there certain classes that students are struggling with more than others? What supports can the school put in place to help these struggling students to finish strong? So some examples might be a brown bag lunch tutoring. So people bring their lunch from home, they go into a room, and they tutor while they eat lunch. Kids respond to that very well. We have peer tutors, and we also had teachers in there as well. Another thing they loved was phone a friend. So kids love being on their phones, whether it's texting or talking. So they're able to have that one buddy that they can call up and get help with their homework. And then we've also had terrific Tuesday tutoring. And that's where a teacher volunteers to stay after school on Tuesday and tutor the kids. And then we were actually able to provide buses for the kids to get home because that always seems to be an issue. The kids can't stay after because they can't get home. So if somehow you can arrange for them to get home, it's really beneficial. So another thing to look at while you're trying to increase your bandwidth is who are the champions in your school? So when you're creating these interventions using your early warning system, who does the interventions? Here you can see the biggest champion is the teachers. okay? And we know this because it is a school and a lot of interventions happen within the classroom. So who else can you tap into to become more champions? Is it possible, like here you have the administration, the counselor, the dean, and the social worker. Are there librarians you can use? Are there outside resources who come in and help on a regular basis that you could utilize? So just start thinking about who else can be your champion. And on this next one, here are typical interventions that we see. Are there other areas that could be expanded? Like, could a group of students benefit from one intervention over another one? And how can we make that happen? So think of tutoring, okay? That seems to be used about 6% of the time at this school. How could we make it so more students felt welcome to go to tutoring and they reap the benefits of it? A counseling group for students who have incarcerated parents or deceased parents might improve behavior or attendance. And I've actually seen that happen, and that's not listed on here, but I do know at another school that was one of the interventions. So a lot of those counseling groups can cover large numbers of kids. All right, now I want to know how you increase your bandwidth of interventions for finishing strong. What can you do so that more people can help with the interventions? And go ahead and type those in, and I'm going to go back and read the ones for student voice. Our team took motivational interviewing training in an effort to listen to the students without judgment, to build better relationships, and work toward changes the students orchestrate. I love that. That's really, truly getting student voice. So as you type in about increasing bandwidth, I'm going to continue talking about adult motivation. So as the school year draws to a close, adults need motivation to finish strong just as much as the students do. One great way to determine what motivates adults is, of course, to ask them. And surveys, again, are a quick and simple way to find out. Motivation can come from the students, or it can come from other students in the building, or it can come from within the teacher themselves. One school held a scavenger hunt with one clue being given each week. So the principal, as soon as the kids had left, about 5 minutes after the kids had left, she got on the intercom and she would give clues as to where they could find the next clue. So the teams would get together and they would go from place to place and pick up the clues, and then they were able to win a prize at the end that was donated. So it was a great way just to keep them motivated, to keep them encouraged, to keep them having fun at school. Another school created I Spy boxes. So you know when you were little and you would say, I spy with my little eyes, and you'd play that game? So this is where teachers and students wrote down things they saw that were positive that the teachers and staff were doing, and then they put them in a box. A weekly winner was drawn and had the honor of displaying a little trophy that we made in their room or workspace for the week until the next winner was drawn. All the notes were read aloud at the staff meeting, and they were celebrated by the entire staff. So this is one way that they love to celebrate, and this is it's sparkling grape juice, but they still loved seeing that, and they did it at a staff meeting, and it was just made it more of a festive atmosphere. So it was a lot of fun. Adults in schools wear many hats, okay? They're not just a teacher. That's not their only responsibility. Lots of times they're juggling 5 to 10 different activities at the same time and different responsibilities. So lots of times they're also involved in events and projects for the district. So this leadership role that they take on, that can become a motivator for themselves. Many students, testing signals the end of the school year, even though there are several days or weeks after testing. This is a great opportunity for teachers to utilize the teaching and learning techniques shared earlier. And being able to go deeper into things is also a great motivator. Here's another example of adult motivation. Students voted on superlatives for teachers, and then they made trophies and gave them to the teachers. As you can see, look at the smiles on all those teachers' faces. They were loving it. And these trophies are just the cutest. And the kids did all of that. It was amazing. Here's at another school. They did a gratitude cart. So it was the group of student ambassadors who pulled all this together, and they made posters and cards for the teachers saying how much they loved them. And they were able to give them a snack. They went to each room and they gave them a bag of chips, they gave them a pop, and they gave them a candy bar. And the teachers loved it. And as the teachers were standing in the doorway getting them, the kids in the classroom were cheering and just being so positive and so wonderful with their teachers. So that was a great motivator as well. And again, as you get to share, what do you do for adult motivation in your school? How do you keep the teachers engaged through the end of the year? And as you add those motivation ideas, we're going to keep talking about finishing strong, but please add those ideas. I want to be able to share them and utilize them in all the schools that we work with. Now it's time for you to think about finishing strong at your school. The first question or thought is usually, who has time to organize and do all this? And I know it can seem overwhelming, but you can do it. So think about, who are your go-to people that are always willing to step up and go that extra mile for the kids? And how can you engage these people to help you in finishing strong? And then take it a step further. Are there underutilized people that would be willing to step up and take charge of an activity? Are there hidden teacher leaders that can become champions? Find those people and use their strengths to help the school. Think of existing committees you already have. If you have an attendance committee, they can help you plan events focused around attendance. If you have school teams, they can help you plan events focused around math or literacy or science or social studies or art or, whatever area you would like them to be. So utilize those people within the school. Okay, so we had a share out from here. It says, graduating students write 3 letters to people who help them reach their goal of graduation. As an adult, it is such an honor to receive one of these letters. That is a fantastic idea. I love that for motivating the adults. Nice. Based on what you've heard so far, you have to determine what activities would work in your school. Because you know your school the best, you want to tailor the events for maximum impact at your school. I want to share with you a sample plan. Now, in saying this, I want to say this was not the very first year plan that we came up with. The first year we focused on attendance, and then we've expanded on it since then. So don't be overwhelmed, because I know this looks very involved and it started 12 weeks out. It's okay if you're not 12 weeks out and you haven't started anything. Just start from where you are with what you want to accomplish for this year, okay? You can see that we do have a timeline. This particular one started 12 weeks before the end of the year. If you only have 4 or 6 weeks left, start there. It's never too late. We really want to keep the kids engaged. And then here are the 5 areas that we talked about, and we want to make sure that we utilize those to keep the kids engaged. And you can see the first step at 12 weeks out is to collaborate. People have to talk. It's no more working in isolation. You need to work together. At this school, I will say we had a Diplomas Now team, which means we had Talent Development Secondary, which is where I work, and then we also had City Year. And they were able to, they're the near peers, they were able to work with some of the kids as well. And then we also had Communities in Schools, which works with mainly the Tier 3 kids, getting them social services and connecting them that way. So that's why some of these events were able to take place, and you'll see a lot of them say with the DN team. So that was, the 3 teams, the 3 groups that make up the team. As the weeks go by, planning continues and implementation begins. People in the school begin to take ownership of specific events. So the momentum grows as teachers see, oh, this is working, this is great, the kids are here, they're engaged, they're staying on task and doing what we need them to do. They get more and more engaged. So let the math department take the lead to plan and implement a math Olympics or another math event, maybe a math night. Let the ELA department, the English department, take the lead to get guest speakers, or maybe they want to do a literacy night. Divide up the task so they become manageable and doable. 1 to 2 people cannot do this. It takes a team, it takes the school. And now 6 weeks out, the implementation is in full swing. And again, if you're 6 weeks out now till the end of the year, start there. It's okay. What are you going to do to keep those kids engaged? Because after testing, a lot of times kids disengage. How are we going to keep them coming to school, doing their work, passing those courses? Then we also had 3 weeks out, students and teachers can almost taste that last day of school. We want to keep them finishing strong. Here's a sample calendar. This is actually one that we used. It's a master calendar of events that we created to let all stakeholders know what is happening and when. This we've shared with surrounding companies to see if they want to support any of the events. We actually have a local bank that provides a money booth each year. So that's the one where the kids step in, there's money on the floor, and then they zip it up, and then they take a blower and they blow the money up, and the kids are grabbing the money. They're willing to donate that for us. And students have to meet a certain criteria, and then their names are added, and they are drawn out. 6 students are selected, and they get to grab the money, and they get to keep it. And the bank is so generous, they usually allow us to draw 2 to 3 teacher names as well. So the kids and the teachers love this event. Even the final week has activities to maintain student engagement. We want the students at school acting right and passing their classes until the very last day of school. Okay, and you can see a lot of that becomes field trips, the drillers game, that's a baseball game that we were able to take them to. So it became a lot of activities, a lot of fun. And again, we got community involvement as well. Okay, so now it's your turn to really, truly think about finishing strong. I challenge each of you to create a finishing strong plan for the last month or 2 of school. And then in the chat box, I want each person to type one thing they're willing to champion to help their school finish strong. So if each attendee will start typing, what do they want to do to help champion one thing that they can do to help the school finish strong? So I expect to see a lot of typing being done. What are you going to do to be a champion at your school to help it finish strong? And as you're typing, I am going to put up my email address. So if you have any questions, feel free to email me. Let me know if you want copies of anything. I'll be happy to do that. And until I'm going to give you back the ball. And if there's any questions, please feel free to type those in as well. And as you finish typing, I just want to thank everyone for attending this session. I appreciate you being here. So one says we started in January with attendance incentives for the final semester at 90%. Good job. That is fantastic. Can you share what some of those attendance incentives were? Ah, yes. So they would dismiss their case from court. That's great. So they're definitely talking about those Tier 3 students. And to get those back on track at 90%, that's fantastic.
We also have a comment in the question and answer field. It says, as I work at a technical college, I can sponsor a career exploration field trip event at my college or other community event.
Fantastic. Get them thinking about the future. I love that.
And then another thing that came into the chat is so far we dismissed 3 cases.
Fantastic. That's huge, especially with those Tier 3 students. That's great progress. Definitely something to be celebrated. And don't be afraid to celebrate those wins, because those are wins. We want to remember each student is important, and we want to make sure that they achieve their best. Thank you to everyone who's been typing in what they're willing to commit to doing to finish the year strong. I appreciate that.
This is Veronica. Does anyone have any other questions or comments regarding the presentation? All right, well, I want to thank Donette and all of you for attending today. We hope you found this information helpful and informative. A reminder that this webinar was recorded and should be available on our temporary web page probably within the next week or so. And Dantel just posted that URL link in the chat box. There is also information about the national convening that is set to take place May 9th and 10th in Baltimore on that web page. So you can go to that web page and learn a lot more information about that event, look over the agenda and the speakers, and see if that's something you would be interested in attending. We'd certainly love to have you there. So again, please just keep an eye out for our emails coming out regarding the website. And I want to thank everybody again. Donette, thank you so much for your expertise and your presentation today. And we hope to see you all again at a future webinar. Thanks so much.